Sounds like you're back.
I'm back. Sorry for the technical glitch. All right. It'd be interesting to see how long I could talk without everybody here. Welcome, everybody, to episode 45 of the Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. My name is Anthony Ewing. I'm a partner here at Thoughteum. And we go live each week to our community, our friends, our clients, and even our families. And we bring you leaders and topics that matter most to you all, particularly those leaders who are doing an incredible job of navigating today's uncertainties and seeing beyond what is possible. And today we have a great guest with us who I will introduce in just a moment. But first, we'll cover off on a few housekeeping items. We want to welcome everybody joining us, particularly those folks who have joined via Zoom. Those folks who are on Zoom can say hello in chat. They can also ask questions through Q&A and chat functionality. We'll try to answer those throughout. We want to welcome our LinkedIn community. You know, we get more and more folks tuning in via LinkedIn every week, and we love to show up every week for our LinkedIn community with a diverse group of leaders and a diverse group of topics. And so those folks who stop by in the feed, or maybe you're watching via LinkedIn, we would love for you to say hello and even ask a question in comments. We'll keep an eye on that throughout. This is episode 45, so we are 45 weeks into the Navigating Now platform with a real focus on bringing a new community of leaders to the table. And each week we go live on these social media platforms to bring that perspective. This week we are extremely excited to introduce Kaili Linville-Caruso. Kaili is a strategic account executive at Autodesk. Kaili is a leader in the sales industry. She's also a leader here in the Chicago local marketplace. And Kaili is going to bring a fresh perspective on what it's like to evolve your career and your role through changing times, particularly through a major acquisition. And you know, this episode, I think, is going to ring true for a lot of folks who either started small and went big, or maybe folks like myself who started within large organizations and then wanted to really kind of dive into the startup world. Like, what is that transition like? And Kaili's going to bring a little bit of that perspective. How can we lead through that transition and some of those critical shifts that occur during major acquisitions, major market events, or major pivots in your career? So Kaili, welcome to the table. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Super excited to be here. Really excited to hopefully give my fresh perspective and hopefully learn a little bit today too.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of learning, you know, we were joking before the call that every week I'm learning something new, particularly about what it's like to facilitate community in a live environment. Today, I learned that you can't be on mute for the first minute and 30 seconds without, you know, 3 people from your team texting you saying, hey, we can't hear you. So thank you for those folks who chimed in. But, you know, I think that's a really good reminder of, you know, you and I, as we were prepping for this show, we're really talking about sales and the role of sales in organizations and how that role has evolved over time.
Yeah.
I want to maybe start, though, with, you know, you've been in sales now for a handful of years and you have a lot of experience across a couple of different sales-oriented roles. What are some of your, you know, fondest memories, or maybe like a really great story that you have that, you know, other folks in sales can potentially relate to? Because I think we as sales and marketing leaders all have some, you know, really interesting stories that, you know, I think other leaders maybe can relate to, just in terms of, you know, cutting your teeth in the sales world or dealing with a difficult customer.
Yeah, so maybe not related to a difficult customer, but maybe more of a faux pas on my end. I'm in the construction industry, and as you can imagine, being a woman in the construction industry, you know, going into any office to pitch to typically a bunch of men is always a little bit daunting. Well, I got my career start in San Francisco, and you know, in San Francisco, you dress in layers, right? You never know what weather you're going to get. So I would always wear, you know, my blazer, maybe a sweater, you know, whatever you need to make sure that you're going to be warm or cool during that day. One particular day, I had an in-person meeting, and they had these lights that were just like shining down on me in this tiny little office. And I just remember it being like incredibly hot. And the next thing I know, because I was nervous anyways, I was just sweating, like profusely sweating, trying to give my pitch, like my fingers slipping all over the keyboard, trying to demo them my product and talk about why they should be using it. And I just remember thinking, like, just push through. They're not focused on your sweat. They're not focused on it dripping down your face. Just push through and deliver your message. And, looking back, it wasn't such a big deal, but I remember just in that moment of time, being just mortified, but just remembering to deliver my message. And anytime I ever get in a situation like that, it's deliver your message, just keep going, because they don't really care about the sweat that's dripping down your face. Yeah. So I always dress lighter now when I go into meetings. That's the moral of my story.
Yeah, it's like the Finding Nemo, just keep swimming type of a deal. And if there's ever a perfect mantra for the sales world, it's the ability to show up, the ability to then let go of any judgment that you or your customers may have from one conversation to the next, and then the ability to turn around and do the exact same thing the next day. And
I got the deal, man. I got it. They didn't care about my sweat. I got the deal.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's interesting how, we talk about the changing landscape of the sales world, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today because it has changed. At the same time, some of the stories are they're so similar from one year to the next, one generation to the next. I started my career in sales, spent 8 years in pharmaceutical sales, and just have so many both incredible and also some, learning moments, some funny stories. It was my time in sales, though, that I feel as though I learned the most. And I think it's because, you were 100% accountable for showing up to whatever situation was possibly put in front of you. As much as our organizations like to arm us with sales training and playbooks, at the end of the day, you are out there in the field. Yeah. You are showing up for your customers. And you have to have, and we've been using this term a lot, the agility to be able to react in real time. So, how have you developed that sense of agility, or how has your agility changed or evolved over the years? Because I can imagine you build more of it as you cut your teeth, correct?
Yeah. I think just being comfortable, this probably will sound cheesy, but being comfortable with myself and my capabilities, right? Being able to really own the room, walk in with the confidence that you can have these conversations, whatever it is put in front of you. And also for me personally, just knowing my product, right? You're not going to have a swagger if you can't walk into a room and know that whatever question comes at you, you could answer and you could have a conversation around it. That and just the ability to not necessarily lead with product, right? Maybe lead with pain, lead with a little empathy towards your customers and the conversations that you're having, instead of, pushing the product that you're trying to sell. That humanizes you a little bit, and you can have any conversation. You could enter into any kind of topic that helps the customer, really.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been introducing this topic of situational intelligence or situational awareness, particularly in the last year, as we've been supporting organizations, sales teams, through the pandemic. A lot of organizations' sales teams were affected more so than any other part of the organization, particularly outside sales teams who are now tethered to their home office. Yeah. And we realized very quickly as an industry that this was not just about turning Zoom on. Unlike the way that we operate internally within our organizations, it's not as easy to interact with customers in a virtual first environment. So what have your experiences been in, let's call it the flipped sales model over the course of the last year? And second question, maybe, what's here to stay in terms of what we've learned around, interacting with and engaging our customers from afar?
Yeah. Well, I'll start by saying I haven't met any of my Chicago customers ever in person. When I moved here from San Francisco, kind of took on this new role, I wasn't in offices, and then COVID hit, and now I've only met everybody over Zoom. So it's been very interesting to have to build these relationships where you really have to lead trust in yourself from these big organizations that are going to spend, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars with you. So what I've been doing every single meeting, I always flip on my Zoom camera. I don't care if the other side of the table isn't flipping on their Zoom camera. They're going to see my face. We're going to have a conversation if I'm even talking to myself. And then, I'm sorry, what was your follow-up question?
What of this last year will stay in terms of the new selling model?
I think a lot of companies are seeing that you don't need to have necessarily your workers in the city that they're selling into. I'm seeing a lot of LinkedIn articles, especially talking about how they're going to allow their employees to maybe work from home, 50% of the time, and maybe go into the office the other 50% of the time. I think people are seeing, and companies are starting to see that you can really save a lot of money by having a remote workforce. And it's so good on the employees. It saves commute time. You get to spend more time with your kids. I have dogs and a cat personally that I like to spend as much time with as possible. I get to cook dinner every night with my husband. I think that we will see that some of that is here to stay. Maybe not entirely, right? Companies might not go fully remote, but I do think that there's more importance placed now by the employees on companies to be able to have that flexibility.
Yeah, I love it. And I want to circle back to this, but we always get to this point where I get so excited about you and your work, and I have yet to actually formally introduce you. So I want to go back to, the theme of this episode, is really about navigating the change, the growing pains, the growing opportunities from startup through acquisition. So Kaili, if you could tell us a little bit of the timeline of the last few years and how, your career and your kind of ambitions have evolved as you've been through a bit of change from startup to and through acquisition to now a larger corporation.
Yeah, happily. Well, I guess I'll start at the beginning of my sales career. I got my sales career start, like many people, I'm sure, at Yelp. I actually had 2 job offers at the time, and this is in San Francisco. And one was with a very small startup and one was with Yelp. And I decided to go with Yelp because I heard about their fantastic sales training program. It's an ongoing program in which even, you're with the company a couple of years, they still have these different sessions for you to join and, continued education. But it was kind of rumored that once you go through this pretty daunting year with Yelp and their sales training program, really get thrown into the trenches, that you could get hired with any sales organization because they know you have the grit, right? At Yelp, you're pushing out 80 phone calls a day. Like, it's no joke. Well, that rang true for me. I got picked up by Building Connected. It was a startup founded in 2012, and they were pre-construction software. I didn't know anything about construction. I had to learn a whole new language when I joined this company. And that was, I think, probably the most daunting piece to me is, sitting down and having face-to-face, because at that time we could be face-to-face conversations with these construction professionals, these kind of behemoths in San Francisco who build everything around you, and being able to talk educatedly about their processes. It was very hard, most challenging thing I've ever done, but the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And really kind of going back to that swagger, right? Once I learned that language and I could walk into my room with a swagger and kind of own conversations and talk to people about real world problems that are affecting their building, I just fell in love with the industry. So I joined the company when, in 2015, there was about 20 people in the entire company, including the engineers. We worked in this tiny little corner WeWork office that overlooked the bay. It was beautiful. But I was right there next to the developers, and I was the 3rd salesperson that they hired on, along with another person. And it was just great, like having that small kind of team mentality, being able to walk over and say, hey, a customer requests that we update, this tool on the software was huge. I remember we got an email that every single time a new person signed up for our software, we got an email for it. Like, that's how small we were. Fast forward, we grew the company to, include many, many, many general contractors. That's what I worked with, general contractors. We activated them, is what we called it. And in 2018, we were acquired by Autodesk. So at this time, Autodesk was acquiring many other software companies. There's a company called PlanGrid. It's a field collaboration tool. They acquired both of us right at around the same time because they were creating what they call Autodesk Construction Solutions. Historically, Autodesk is a design company, but they saw a lot of opportunity in the construction market and really kind of an untapped market to bring all of these really great solutions together. And Building Connected was at the forefront of the pre-construction software as the #1 bidding tool. And that's where my adventure started with Autodesk.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think very few sales folks start in the startup space and then go big. It's typically the other way around, and I think there's advantages to both. Myself, I started in pharmaceuticals with one of the largest pharmaceutical companies here in the U.S. still today, and one of the advantages was that we had this very robust, formal training program, and it was industry renowned. Even just making it through the training program was a huge accomplishment. At the same time, there was a very homogenous approach to the way that we sold. And back in the day, it was reach and frequency. And it was all about, in your world, making those 80 calls a day. In my world, those 5 to 7 visits to physicians every day. And as robust as the training program was, it really was so that you could stay in your lane. You could go very deep with a very specific message, and you could do it over and over and over. And it sounds like your start in Building Connected almost allowed you to start with a blank canvas and almost figure it out yourself, and also be involved in the entire sales process, for all the way to the email that comes through that says that you all have won the business. So tell us a little bit about maybe the advantages of starting in such a small grassroots environment as a sales representative or an account executive.
Yeah, I guess to talk about that, I'd have to really kind of talk about my training at Yelp, because I don't know if I would have been at Building Connected without Yelp, right? They did put us through this training program where it was very regimented, right? It's Mondays, you make your cold calls. Tuesdays, you follow up. Thursdays, you go back to the people that you touch base with on Monday. And so being new to sales and having that sales training really helped kind of put a plan in my mind of how I should be looking at each and every account, how I should be planning my day, and most importantly, how I should be spending my time. And so when I went over to Building Connected, and like with any startup, there's not a lot of processes in place. Having that knowledge and being able to bring it over to a startup, I think was really invaluable. And I feel like kind of helped me kind of coach them into a way to really build out these different processes. Now, being a startup, you have the flexibility to kind of edit these processes as you'd like, right? Maybe you don't have to do all these cold calls on Monday. So being able to have the flexibility in the startup environment to kind of finagle with what's working and what's not working, and build out around what is working for this specific product with this specific sales team was really cool to watch. And I have to blame Yelp for it. I have to thank Yelp for it.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Ultimately, your start with Yelp gave you the tools, structure, the discipline, right, to then kind of step into the wild west and figure it out yourself. You're now back with back in the larger enterprise environment. Tell us a little bit about that transition. From Building Connected and kind of managing your territory with kind of your own two hands and very grassroots, to now having the access to a lot more resources, but also having to kind of manage through that. What have been some of the biggest challenges and opportunities through this acquisition?
Yeah, with Building Connected, I wore every single hat. We didn't have the resources to have BDRs calling outbound for us, or customer success managers to hold the hands of your customers, or implementation managers to make sure they just get up and running correctly. That was all on me. I'd constantly be taking off and on these hats all day long, which I really loved, because I got an intimate connection with each and every one of my customers. I wasn't just a face that they saw at the beginning or at the end of the sales process, or, when they signed their contract, they never see me again. I really became their go-to person. To this day, I still have old clients that will call me because they're just not sure who their new rep is, because we had that relationship. So my biggest challenge with moving into a bigger company such as Autodesk was learning to kind of relinquish some of that control. It's not a bad thing, though. We have so many resources being with a large company that were kind of suddenly dropped in my lap, right? So now I do have the ability to work with a larger team to ensure the success of my clients, that I didn't have before. And my biggest challenge was just letting go, kind of trusting everybody around me to also support my customer, how I would support them, making sure that we're all aligned and, have the same goals in mind, but really just letting go and trusting my resources around me. That's been my biggest challenge, but it's been the best challenge. I can't complain about extra resources. I mean, who would?
Well, at the same time, with extra resources might come, the challenge of having to navigate, horizontally across the organization. Might come the challenge also of things, kind of having to be socialized and approved. So, the sales process might be a little bit more elongated, potentially not as efficient. So what are outside of letting go, has there been any other challenges that you've encountered that you feel like you've either had to grow into or overcome?
Yeah, I mean, of course, with a bigger company, there's more red tape. That's just kind of the name of the game. The processes are going to be a little bit different. One really unique thing about Autodesk Construction Solutions being within Autodesk is it's almost like a startup within a big company is kind of what we've looked at it as. And the fact that we were acquired with other startups as well, such as PlanGrid, as I mentioned before, we really came together with kind of a startup mentality. All of us were from the same startup life. We're kind of used to a little bit more relaxed processes, a little bit less red tape. And so I think the culture has really fostered this more startup mentality. I'm not going to say that there's not red tape or frustrations, but there's willingness at the top to listen to us and actually make real changes. We're constantly being surveyed or asked, how could we be better? How could we make your sales process be better? How can we make you sell better? That's really all they want to do. And we're actually listened to. So while there's been struggles, I think the benefit of us kind of being a startup within this big company has had a lot of benefits. And I actually have say in these maybe struggles that I'm facing. I do feel like I actually have say and changes are being made. So ideally, I mean, that's what you want, right? If you're going to work for a big company.
Tell us about, the relationship that you have with your SDRs, sales development representatives, for those folks who are not familiar, and your CSMs, your customer success managers. These are two terms that, I was introduced to about 10 years into my sales career, where again, when I started in the early 2000s, a sales rep was a sales rep was a sales rep. And you had to know who to kind of call on within the organization to support you. Organizations are getting a lot more strategic and a lot more, business oriented when it comes to their approach with their customers. So organizations now are building out teams of these kind of different channels that you can leverage as an account executive. So tell us about some of these channels for those folks who, maybe are new to this selling model.
Yeah, absolutely. What Autodesk, we call them BDRs, or business development managers. So less salesy, but we work as a team, and that's really what I mean when I got more resources kind of dropped in my lap. I mean, how lucky am I that I get a BDR to actually call and, they set up these meetings with us. They qualify out some of our prospects that we might be talking to, ensure that they're a right fit for any of our products. They're really making that first touch point to introduce me. And then customer success managers, I love my CSMs. Oh my gosh. they're really the ones that, as the sale is kind of wrapping up, we do call it a handoff, but I always like to be involved with my accounts forever, but they're really the ones leading the success with the customer. So they'll set up quarterly business reviews to ensure that we're hitting all the key metrics that, the customer wants to accomplish. But to make this all run well and to have a well-oiled machine, is all about collaboration and teamwork. Right, I'm meeting with each of them weekly, sometimes more than once a week, slacking with them constantly, going back and forth about who to reach out to, when it's appropriate to reach out to somebody, or maybe, when to pump the brakes and let's talk before you reach out to them. So without like that constant communication and collaboration, I mean, the whole machine would fall apart. It's really about working as a team and communicating like 24/7.
It's so interesting. We have a handful of clients in the enterprise sales world, and it never fails from organization to organization. The CSMs just have this, it's almost like they are the heart of the commercial organization.
Yeah.
And that used to be us, the sales folks, but it's almost that role, that customer success role that is so intently focused on the customer experience is something that it's not a one person job, for you to manage both the engagement of your customers, the kind of bringing forward of your value proposition and the sale. And also then to walk the path with your customers in terms of getting them onboarded with your products and troubleshooting and following up. Again, that used to be something that, we would just manage on the side. And the fact that organizations now have these customer success managers that is just intently focused on making it the best possible experience for the customers. It's like, why didn't we think about this a long time ago?
Exactly.
And some of the coolest, biggest hearted people play this role, and I'm starting to see why they've got to have that demeanor and that mentality.
Yeah, and they have to have tough skin too, like really thick skin, because sometimes the feedback isn't always what they want to hear, and they're really the voice also to our product team when somebody might suggest an update or they're not happy with how something has been changed, anything like that. They're really that voice that goes back to product. But I look at them as, like I said, they're like my godsend. I love them.
So, you mentioned this, the ability of letting go. And I think that really resonates with, leaders, not just leaders in sales roles. You kind of put it through the lens of when you've got a lot of resources that are there to support you and you come from a world that's a little bit more scrappy. Sometimes it is a little bit of a challenge to let go of the control, of the autonomy, particularly when it comes to your customer set. What are some of the other ways that, letting go, or I call it letting go of the rope, has, helped you in your career?
Wow. Letting go. I think letting go of, I'm going to go back to talking about being a woman in this industry, because that's one of the things that was really, and I mean, still was really challenging for me at the beginning, was getting over that fear of walking into a room, at a big general contracting firm, talking to mostly a group of men, and kind of telling them how they should be doing things, right? Being able to gain my confidence and just kind of, I'm going to use the word let go of that fear, has, I think, launched my career in that I'm just able to, I'm able to talk better. I'm able to present myself better. I have the ability to say yes to something like this, right? To just put myself out there and just kind of let go of that fear, I think has been the biggest and one of the most challenging things for me, just specifically being a woman in this industry. And I'm working on it every single day. It's still daunting sometimes, but it's something I'm getting over. Yeah.
Well, I mean, even just you sharing that, I think, is a huge gift, particularly to our community and hopefully to yours as well too. So thank you very much for sharing that. We do a lot of work in design thinking, and this is a process that we love to bring to our clients and introduce in our work as a way to get a lot closer to our end customers, like really putting ourselves in their shoes. And one of the principles that we bring forward in design thinking that comes before anything is your ability to defer judgment. Mm-hmm. And what I'm hearing you say is, there's a lot of different types of judgment that are out there, particularly when we don't have an answer to something, but we need to solve it, or we're in a brainstorming type of an environment, or we're in a sales type of an environment. Oftentimes we only see the potential judgment of others. Mm-hmm. But what we realize sometimes is that it's our own judgment that's getting in the way. Yeah. It's our own ability to break through our own misconceptions, or even just our own past experiences that gets in the way. And that's incredibly empowering, because then you realize you have control. And if you can defer your own judgments, you can show up in a way that's, much more confident than waiting for other people to defer their judgments, if that makes sense. And I appreciate you for bringing that up, because it sounds like you were able to really address and handle some of even just your own judgments in terms of the way that you would show up in a sales environment. That's incredible.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, and I also I love the real psychological and emotional component to selling.
Yeah.
I really do, particularly because, again, as somebody who went through the Yelp sales training program, and for me as somebody who went through the Pfizer training program, again, like, we see sales sometimes as so mechanical. We see, sales as following a process. And I want to ask you about, the sales process here in a moment. But sales is so much more than features and benefits and a sales process. There's real nuance to it. And oftentimes it starts with your ability to handle and to address your own level of confidence. So I want to ask you a question. What are your thoughts on selling models? You've probably been trained on or exposed to different selling methodologies, whether that's, Challenger or, you name it. There's a lot of them out there. Pros and cons of selling models, and have you been exposed to some that really work? Do you have your own style? How do you think about the sale in terms of the selling model?
Yeah, I really like a selling model, like a structured selling model. I like the ability to explore what works for you. I will say that. I think a lot of companies kind of pick a model and you're trained on it and that's how you're selling. But I think that it's always good when there's some sort of structure in place, when it's not just wild, wild west and you're figuring it out. But again, I do believe in the value of choosing what might be the best model for you, because what might work for you might not work for the next person. It's all about your level of confidence and also your level of commitment to learning that specific model. I am trained on force management. And it's really about being a consultative seller. And that's what's worked for me, even when I wasn't under a selling model and I was just kind of figuring it out by myself. I think consultative selling is the best approach to any sort of sales situation. Being able to really pull the pain out of the customer, understand with empathy, like what their actual needs are without leading by the product or with the product. Is the best way to make a connection with somebody and earn their trust and figure out a way that you're going to solve their problem. Because at the end of the day, that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to figure out what your problem is. I'm here to solve it. And I'm not here to shove software down your face. Throughout a conversation, we might not even necessarily talk about the software that I have in mind that might work for you. It's just about your problem and, how we're going to fix it. Personally, that's what I think the best approach is, but I do like sales methodologies. I believe in the power to choose. I'm not trained on all of them, but I think there's a lot of interesting concepts out there, certainly.
I love that response. I really do, because I think, some of the most weathered salespeople almost default to this mentality of sales models are canned. I've never really subscribed to a sales model. You need to, lean on your strengths, rely on your strengths in conversation. I will tell you, as somebody who has gone in and out of organizations and consulted them on sales training, we are always very suspect of organizations who pride themselves on having zero structure in their selling model.
Wow. Okay.
Oftentimes we will go into those organizations and we will see that they have a group of sales folks who, who are talking the talk in terms of, their ability to really engage and enact change and change in behavior in their customers. But we realize they are all over the map. Everybody's got their own approach, their own methodology, and there tends to then be a bunch of different pages in the hymnal, if you will, in terms of the message that's being relayed to customers. And today, more than ever, that message needs to be focused and it needs to be targeted. Mm-hmm. So I love your response in that there is there's nuance, but structure is the foundation. And there are selling models out there that have been proven. There are approaches that have been proven. And regardless, as a sales organization, you need to take pride in the specific way that you're engaging with your customers. I love that. We have a couple questions that came through. Appreciate the questions. We'll handle one or two of them here. The first, how did COVID impact, Kaili, your sales model? Did the industry suffer? And did you and or your organization have to pivot?
Yeah. How did it really didn't impact my sales model, to be completely honest. I was already working remotely in the office. And while I could have been going and starting to meet my customers in person, I stayed just kind of dialing in over Zoom. So I didn't feel the brunt of that so much myself. Now the industry, absolutely, working in the construction industry, everybody is in person. You're on site every day. You're working with subcontractors. You're meeting with your owners. You're meeting with your designers and architects. So that was really interesting to kind of surf the wave of COVID through the construction industry and kind of see how they were handling things. Many companies will dial in for to be connected by the internet via like VPN, and that VPN might be running really slowly, right? They're not necessarily in a cloud-based environment. All of a sudden, instead of meeting in person for on-site team meetings, everybody was in their individual homes and they couldn't get together to look over the construction plans. So being able to kind of talk through those pains with some of my customers was extremely interesting. And I saw that they quickly pivoted. The most successful companies that I saw through COVID, and when I say successful, I mean like how they handled it, were the ones that from the beginning recognized that this is a real problem. We need to find a way to collaborate efficiently from the beginning. And they used, whether it was our tools or other tools, they were able to recognize that and come together to adopt these new processes internally really quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think this is a great follow-up question, and I'm so glad it came through because I love this topic, and the term tenacity comes up a lot in terms of what it takes to be a great sales professional. And we know that sales requires tenacity, and we're curious, how do you keep a certain sense of tenacity or even consistency in a world where, and I know this for a fact, sales sometimes can feel like, it's just beating your head against a wall day in and day out, and it's why a lot of folks maybe don't stay in sales for a long time. So how do you keep sharp? How do you keep tenacious in your sales role?
Lots of wine and coffee.
True.
I'm kidding. It's not always easy. As you know, sales is a roller coaster. You're going to have your extreme highs, and sometimes you have your extreme lows. Yeah. I keep excited by just talking to customers. Fortunate for me, the industry that I'm in, selling into construction, I'm not talking to the same company over and over again. I'm talking to, architecture firms, engineering firms. I'm talking to subcontractors who might do only solar fields, all sorts of different kind of companies where every single conversation is genuinely different. Every single pain is genuinely different. And I'm constantly kept on my toes because of that. I learn something new every single day. I mentioned that I had to learn a new language. That was pre-construction language. Well, now I have to learn design all the way to handover language and have to talk the talk and walk the walk. So that really keeps it interesting to me. But I'm just excited about my career. I'm really excited on the trajectory I'm at. Going into Autodesk was not expected for me. I thought I was going to be at Building Connected, this little startup, for the rest of my life. So that was a surprise, but it's been a really pleasant surprise. I am very encouraged by what we're doing, the tools that we're developing, where the industry is heading. That really wakes me up every single day. It's really exciting stuff.
I love that.
Yeah.
We got a couple +1s on the wine and coffee, so you're not the only industry that runs on wine and coffee. Okay, I'm going to be a little selfish here now that I have one of our end customers, end users on the line here. You being an account executive at a large organization, a lot of what we do at Thought Team is designing and delivering great learning experiences, particularly in the commercial space. So, you ultimately are who we're designing for, Kaili. Those folks who want to be developed, those folks who want to enhance their ability to sell, to lead in front of their organization. So tell me a little bit about, what makes a great learning experience for you, particularly in your role? Like, what's a great training experience or an incredible workshop that you've ever been a part of, or like a specific learning path that you were a part of? I know you had mentioned some of your past trainings, but maybe more recently, what makes a great learning experience for you?
Wow, that's a really good question. Structure. I like some structure.
Structure is a theme with you. I love this.
I have my days planned out.
Yes.
Structure, and I'm a learn by doing person. I'm not necessarily like a learn by watching videos, right? Through these different, you mentioned sales paths. We have sales paths where they're typically like, videos where you'll go through and you'll take a quiz at the end. I like to get into a product, click around, and kind of understand what I'm doing through the sales path. So structure, the ability to just kind of have more of a one-on-one, I think experience has always been helpful for me. In person, if possible, is always very helpful for me. I think that's really important. And then just clarity in the message. I've been through too many trainings where you get to the end and I'm not super sure what we were supposed to be picking up on, or, what was the whole intent of the sales path or the training. So just really good structure and clear way to kind of achieve the goal of what you're trying to learn is always how I learn a little bit best.
You said that the live experience is really important for you when it comes to learning. I'm curious when it comes to getting together as a team. I remember how important it was being out in the field to get together, whether that's regionally or nationally, national sales meetings, regional sales meetings. Obviously, a lot of those are up in the air. Everybody's talking about more of a hybrid approach. What is, again, as an end user of these types of experiences, what are you maybe looking forward to in terms of gathering together, or what are some of the challenges that you see now in this new virtual first world?
Sure. I haven't met my team in person. So that really resonates with me. Well, we always talk about, we joke in Slack all the time, what are we going to do when we could finally get together? It's definitely been challenging because you just don't form that camaraderie that you would normally by being in an office, or even just meeting up with your team, once a month for heck, even a trivia night. That's been a little bit challenging. And one of those challenges I think that comes with it is maybe not necessarily always feeling as comfortable as you would maybe going to a teammate to maybe spitball on a deal, or maybe just ask a question too, because you really don't know that person that well. At the end of the day, they're your teammate, so you should be able to have those open conversations. But I think that there's definitely been a barrier kind of put up because we really don't know each other that well. We've never really seen each other in person. And I'm so excited to get back there. Autodesk is huge on bringing people together. The last time I was with everybody was February, Dallas 2 years ago. And, I used to go to the Autodesk universities where you get together with your clients, and that's really where you meet everybody. You take them out to dinners and have this really fun learning experiences that I can't wait to wear my clothes again. Like, I just want to put on my work clothes and meet up with people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can you imagine a world where, we're leveraging technology for the information that really should be a little bit more didactic, and then we're really maximizing the time that we have together? And I'll maybe give you a more specific example. Could you imagine a world where a 4-day national sales conference becomes 2.5 days of virtual presentations, well-run, well-produced virtual presentations, and then a day and a half somewhere nationally, and you've got you fly in on a Tuesday morning, and you've got a full day of collaboration, of getting together, doing some of the community work if you've got it, dinners at night, and you're flying out the next day. Because we're starting to hear some of our customers almost think about this hybrid approach to say, how can we maximize some of the time spent getting somewhere, getting in a big ballroom, sitting in rows of tables so that we could see our CEO on a stage, right? Versus the real magic of getting together, particularly as sales organizations, which is in the training and the collaboration and the social space.
Can I imagine it? Yes. I personally think that in person is best to keep engagement for those types of situations. I've talked to countless people who, we've run conferences through, and we could give them all the apps in the world and say, this is exactly what you need to log into, and this is when, and oh, a meeting came up, or just something else came up, or it might be on one of their monitors while they're working on the other monitor. So I think you really you take away that engagement in a really big way when it's only available via maybe a Zoom link, as opposed to actually watching somebody on stage. That being said, I think there is a lot of value with giving people that flexibility and the time back. I talk a lot about time because I think it's so important, right? Giving families back a couple days to spend with their families at home, as opposed to flying out to Vegas for a 4-day conference, I think has a lot of value in it. I just get concerned about the engagement at that level. And I guess the magic too, it's much more fun when you're at a conference and they have the big to do, and it might only be your CEO up there delivering the message, but you're going to be much more engaged watching him in front of you than you are probably viewing it over a computer screen. That's my personal take.
Well, I'm smiling because you ask different parts of a commercial organization the same question, you're going to get totally different answers, right? And I don't want to stereotype here, but it is true that maybe if you ask a group of engineers the same question, the majority of them would prefer to be virtual first. But we as salespeople, we not only enjoy, but we thrive on that interaction. And as much as, yes, I could see more of a hybrid world where the front and center kind of main stage presentations are all done virtually. I mean, it's what happens in the 2 minutes after the main stage presentation when you're grabbing a Diet Coke that is completely intangible. And I know people keep saying that. I want to make that very specific. It is those connections that you make, particularly with leaders in your organizations, that you might not have access to in a Zoom world or even just in a regular world, that allow you to make the connections that you will need to advance your career. And I worry a little bit about the virtual first environment and how partitioned all of our time and our connection is. In terms of its impact in our ability to network and our ability to network within organizations in a way that will allow us to see a future within these organizations. And I think that those are some of the smaller, maybe more nuanced aspects of this virtual first environment that I think we will learn over time. You cannot network over Zoom. It's impossible. And you need significant periods of time together as a team so that some of those natural collisions can happen, so that those folks who are energetic about reaching out, establishing a mentorship, having a hallway conversation, pitching your COO an idea, over dinner on day 3, those are all things that I miss dearly. I'm sure you probably do as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I always think of it from a customer perspective as you're asking these questions. That's the sales in me, right? Sure. I don't get to talk to my customers, but no, you're absolutely right. Having the ability to walk up to somebody that's in the C-suite and share coffee with them at a conference it's not something that you get to do every single day, and you certainly can't do that over Zoom. So I think that's a really great point. And talking about just kind of networking and not being able to network over Zoom, I've been invited to networking events by companies where they put you into the breakout rooms and you're trying desperately to make some sort of connection without talking over everybody, and it's a mess, and it's a little bit of a nightmare. So I'm certainly very excited to get back into in-person meetings. I want to get back to on the conference circuit. I'm ready.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Spoken like a true sales professional, sales leader. We are, it's funny, I blinked and we are almost at time, but I want to ask you one more question. Sure. We talk a lot on this show and within our community about the term practitionership. And if you haven't heard this term, we use it a lot to challenge people to think about what they're really passionate about. And so the definition of practitionership is to treat your work like an art form or a craft. And more specifically, it's when you feel like you're just in your complete power, when you're in flow, when you have 100% confidence that what you're doing is what you were put here on earth to do. And I feel like I've gotten a sense of that in our short time together with you, but I'm curious, how would you describe your practitionership?
I would describe it as, I'm going to go back to talking about, we didn't talk about this here, but you and I talked about just owning your territory and being the CEO of your territory. I think that really is my calling in any sort of sales position I might ever have in the future, or even within Autodesk, is just really owning my space, owning my role, owning the ability to work with all of the resources that I so luckily have, and growing in any possible way that I can, whether it is through course management or any other sort of sales methodology, but finding a way that works for me, and just owning it, really. That's how I would picture it.
I love that. Ownership. I mean, it's very real, particularly in the sales world. And I can hear the way that you speak to not just your career, but the way that you manage, your day to day, a little bit of, just understanding and owning your resources and putting structure in place to make you succeed. That is all of what it takes, or a lot of what it takes, to be a CEO. It's that real ownership. It's that autonomy. It's that no excuses mentality, and it comes through in a lot of what you're saying. So I appreciate you sharing that concept. That's a whole another episode that we'd love to have you back on to unpack. But first and foremost, Kaili, I wanted to thank you for your time today. I also want to thank you for your practitionership. Oftentimes we press broadcast on a show like this, and it just goes in different directions. And I really, really enjoyed tapping into the real nitty gritty. There's a reason why we've got the clouds and the dirt behind us. Getting into the dirt of territory management, of calling on your resources, on owning your craft as a sales leader and a sales professional. It's something that even today's time has reminded me what I love about sales. And it's very, very clear that you love the process, and you love enabling yourself and others through the process. And I want to thank you for your practitionership. It's so invigorating for me, particularly as somebody who, is, again, designing for folks like yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me, and everybody for listening to my story. This has been really fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kaili. Okay, we are going to wrap things up. Again, Kaili, thank you so much for joining. Kaili is one of just a handful of folks that we have on the docket for the Navigating Now Roundtable series, and we want to share a little bit of who's up next. So next Thursday, June 17th at 3 o'clock, we have another incredible guest, and her name is, sorry, I've got the screen. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen. Anyway, regardless of whether you can see my screen or not, Cynthia Soor is going to be joining us on the Navigating Roundtable series next week. She's the founder of No Straight Lines. Cynthia has an incredible story herself of navigating her career and making some big, big pivots in and out of industries that either served her or didn't. And we're going to bring Cynthia to the table next week to talk about creating success in non-linear career pathways. We bring these discussions to you every week on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. You can register for these events on thoughtteam.com/live. And we look forward to seeing everybody next week, Thursday at 3 o'clock. We hope everybody have a good day, and we will see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.